A bear ended up being chained to the train tracks. Alongside her, they also left her cubs. The ground around them even trembled amidst the animal's desperation. The end was approaching with the train in this shocking story. Before hearing about this cruelty, remember to subscribe to the channel. The roar of the train cut through the silence of the early morning in Colorado, echoing across the snowy valley like a grim omen. Emily Johnson, an internationally renowned wildlife photographer, was adjusting her camera to capture the sunrise when her eyes caught something unusual on the distant tracks. Through her telephoto lens, the scene unfolding before her froze her blood more than the harsh winter itself. A brown bear and her 3 cubs were chained to the tracks with rusted chains. The desperation in the maternal animal's gaze was palpable, even from a distance. Emily didn't think twice. She packed her equipment into her backpack and began running toward the tracks, her feet sinking into the deep snow with each step. The train was approaching relentlessly, its lights cutting through the dim light of dawn. As she ran, her mind quickly processed the details of the scene. The chains weren't there by accident. They were old, deliberately placed. Someone had planned this, and the mere thought made her stomach churn. The noise of the train grew louder, and Emily could feel the vibrations through the tracks in her boots. As she got closer, she noticed the bear watching her with a mix of fear and resignation. It was a look Emily would never forget. There was no aggression, only a deep maternal sadness. The cubs, still very young, huddled close to their mother, shivering not just from the cold, but from terror. With hands trembling from the cold and adrenaline, Emily examined the chains. They were old but sturdy locks. In her backpack, she always carried a basic toolkit, a necessary precaution for someone who spent so much time in the wild. The train was getting closer, its horn echoing through the valley like a warning cry. Emily worked frantically on the locks, her thick gloves hindering the precision she needed. Sweat dripped down her face despite the intense cold. The bear surprisingly remained calm, as if it understood that this human was there to help. The first lock gave way with a metallic snap. Emily moved on to the second, her fingers aching from the effort. The train was so close now that she could feel the heat of its headlights on her back. The second lock opened, and then the third. With one last desperate effort, Emily freed the final chain. The bear, now free, grabbed one of her cubs with her mouth and quickly moved away from the tracks. Emily, without a second thought, picked up the other 2 cubs in her arms. The train was just meters away when she threw herself to the side, rolling in the snow with the little bears safely cradled in her embrace. The train roared past like a metallic thunder, leaving a cloud of snow in its wake. When the white dust settled, Emily found herself face to face with the bear, who had returned to retrieve her other cubs. But there was no hostility in her gaze, only a deep and inexplicable connection between 2 protective mothers, even though one of them had no children of her own. The cubs ran back to their mother, who welcomed them with gentle, comforting licks. The bear family slowly made their way toward the forest, but before disappearing among the trees, the bear stopped and looked back, her eyes meeting Emily's once more. It was a look of gratitude that transcended the barriers between species. Emily remained seated in the snow for a few minutes, her heart still racing, processing what had just happened. The abandoned chains on the tracks told a sinister story that needed to be investigated. Someone had planned this, and she was determined to find out who and why. Standing up, Emily photographed the chains and the surrounding area, documenting every detail that could serve as evidence. Her journey as a wildlife photographer had just taken an unexpected turn. What started as just another workday would turn into a mission to protect not only that family of bears, but all the wildlife in the region. Emily returned to the small village of Maple Ridge with the photographic evidence and the rusted chains in her backpack. The sun was already high in the sky when she pushed open the door of the local cafe, the Cozy Maple, where the townsfolk gathered every morning. The bell above the door jingled, announcing her arrival, and several heads turned in her direction. The establishment was run by Margaret Thompson, a 60-year-old woman who knew all the secrets and stories of the area. Her cafe was a meeting point where news spread as quickly as the aroma of fresh bread and freshly brewed coffee. Margaret was behind the counter when Emily walked in, and she immediately noticed the troubled expression on the photographer's face. "Emily, dear, you look like you've seen a ghost," Margaret remarked, already preparing a cup of the house's special blend. Did something happen during the photo shoot? Emily placed her backpack on the counter and recounted the events of the morning, her voice trembling slightly as she relived the experience. The cafe gradually grew quiet as the other patrons moved closer to listen to her story. Among them was James Anderson, the local veterinarian and director of the Maple Ridge Wildlife Sanctuary. "This is very serious," James declared, examining the chains Emily had brought. "Over the past few months, we've had some injured animals brought to the sanctuary, but nothing as blatant as this. Someone is deliberately targeting our wildlife." Olivia Carter, a local teenager who always visited the cafe before school, seemed particularly affected by the story. Emily noticed how the girl paled and her hands began to tremble around her cup of hot chocolate. There was something about her reaction that seemed out of place. "Olivia, are you okay?" Emily asked gently, noticing how the young girl avoided eye contact. I was just shocked by the story," Olivia replied quickly, grabbing her school backpack. "I need to get to class." James and Emily exchanged meaningful glances as they watched Olivia hurry out of the cafe. There was something suspicious about her behavior, but at that moment, they had more pressing matters to attend to. "Emily, you need to see something at the sanctuary," James said, lowering his voice. "Over the past few months, we've taken in 3 bears with similar injuries, marks from chains and signs of captivity. We suspect someone is trying to illegally capture and train bears, but we didn't have concrete evidence until now." The sanctuary was located on the outskirts of town, a well-structured complex dedicated to the rehabilitation of wild animals. During the drive, James explained that there was a pattern in the cases. The animals showed signs of having been kept in captivity for short periods before being abandoned, or, in the most recent case, deliberately injured. When they arrived at the sanctuary, they were greeted by Sophia Lee, the assistant veterinarian, who was treating a bear cub rescued the previous week. The small animal bore marks similar to those Emily had seen that morning. "The most concerning part," Sophia explained, showing the medical records, "is that these injuries appear to have been caused by circus equipment. Someone is trying to train these animals for some kind of performance." Emily photographed all the documentation, her journalistic instinct blending with her passion for wildlife preservation. As she reviewed the images on her camera, a sudden memory struck her. She had seen posters for a traveling circus in the area a few weeks ago. "James, do you remember the Grand Spectacle Circus that passed through town last month?" Emily asked, a theory beginning to form in her mind. "Yes, but they didn't have any animal acts in their show," James replied, furrowing his brow. "Maybe not officially," Emily suggested, "but what if someone was preparing something behind the scenes? We need to investigate this connection." As they discussed the possibilities, Emily couldn't shake the memory of Olivia's reaction at the cafe. There was something in the teenager's expression that suggested more than just shock. It seemed like guilt, or perhaps fear. The photographer decided she would need to approach the girl carefully, as she might be the key to unraveling the entire mystery. The day progressed, and with it grew Emily's determination to uncover the truth. The bear and her cubs had touched something deep in her heart, and she wouldn't rest until she ensured no other animal would endure such an ordeal. But as she pieced together the puzzle, Emily had no idea that the truth would be even more surprising and complex than it seemed at first glance. The next morning, Emily decided to start her investigation at the local school where Olivia attended. She arrived during the class break, watching the teenagers in the snow-covered courtyard. Olivia was sitting alone on a bench, absent-mindedly fiddling with her phone, when Emily approached. "May I sit?" Emily asked softly, noticing how the girl startled at her presence. Olivia nodded hesitantly, slipping her phone into her coat pocket. Up close, Emily could see dark circles under the teenager's eyes, clear signs of sleepless nights. "You know, Olivia, sometimes carrying a secret can be heavier than all the school backpacks combined," Emily remarked, gazing at the snowy horizon. "Especially when that secret involves something that's hurting other living beings." Olivia's eyes filled with tears. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I wanted to tell, but it's complicated." "Try to explain it to me," Emily encouraged gently. Olivia took a deep breath before beginning. "My Uncle Robert, he used to be a circus trainer in Europe. When he came back here, he started talking about how we could make money by training bears for private performances. He said it would be our secret, something special between us. The story unraveled like a ball of yarn. Robert Harris, Emma's maternal uncle, had returned to Maple Ridge 6 months earlier, bringing with him grand dreams and questionable methods. He had convinced Emma and some of her friends to help him, promising it would be a unique educational experience. At first, it seemed exciting, Emma continued, her voice trembling. He said he was helping the bears, that they would have a better life with us. But then the injuries started, the chains. Emily listened intently, her heart heavy. Emma explained how her uncle had rented an old warehouse near town, turning it into a makeshift training center. When the bears proved difficult to train, Robert became increasingly aggressive. Last night, after hearing your story at the cafe, I couldn't sleep, Emma confessed. That bear, it was Uncle Robert. He got furious because she wasn't cooperating, said she was ruining everything. Emily placed a comforting hand on Emma's shoulder. You're not to blame for his actions, Emma, but now you have the chance to do the right thing. There's more, Olivia said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. He's planning something big for next weekend, a private show for some wealthy out-of-town businessman. He captured 2 more young bears last week. The revelation made Emily sit up straight on the bench. They needed to act quickly but cautiously. Robert Harris wasn't acting alone. There was a larger network involved, with buyers willing to pay for illegal entertainment involving wild animals. Olivia, I need you to tell me everything about that shed and your uncle's plans, Emily asked. But first, let's talk to some people who can help. The two headed toward the school office where Emily explained the situation to the principal, Elizabeth Parker. The experienced educator immediately contacted Olivia's parents and the appropriate authorities. Within hours, an emergency meeting was organized in the principal's office. Olivia's father, Michael Carter, arrived visibly shaken. I can't believe Robert would do something like this, he murmured, hugging his daughter. I always knew he was eccentric, but this... Emily watched the family scene unfold, realizing this story had many layers. It wasn't just about protecting the animals, but also about family ties, broken trust, and the courage to do the right thing, even when it meant confronting the people we love. While the adults discussed the next steps, Olivia remained quiet, but her demeanor had changed. The weight of the secret had been lifted from her shoulders, and now she seemed determined to help correct the mistakes that had been made. The afternoon progressed, and with each new detail revealed, the plan to stop Robert Harris and his illegal operation began to take shape. Emily knew they would need to act quickly, not just for the bears already in captivity, but to prevent more wild animals from falling victim to this cruel scheme. The sun was beginning to set when Emily, accompanied by James Anderson from the sanctuary and 2 environmental protection agents, followed Olivia's directions to the abandoned warehouse. The structure was hidden in a remote valley, surrounded by snow-covered pine trees. From a distance, it seemed like just another abandoned building in the Colorado landscape, but as they approached, the muffled sounds of growling revealed its true nature. This is it, Emily whispered, recognizing the location from Olivia's detailed descriptions. The warehouse has a main entrance and a side door that leads to the back. James checked his tranquilizing equipment, darts with safe sedatives for bears, specially prepared for this operation. We need to be extremely cautious, he warned. Stressed bears are unpredictable, even in captivity. The environmental agents, Anderson and Martinez, positioned themselves strategically while Emily documented everything with her camera. The moment demanded precise documentation, not just for legal purposes but also to raise public awareness about wildlife trafficking. As they approached the structure, the group could hear voices coming from inside. Robert Harris wasn't alone. There were at least 2 other people with him, animatedly discussing numbers and performances. The show has to be perfect by Saturday. Robert's deep voice echoed through the walls of the shed. The buyers are paying a fortune to see something extraordinary. Emily felt her stomach churn as she heard the commercial tone in which he spoke about the animals. Through a crack in the wall, she could see inside the shed. 3 large cages occupied the central space, each containing a young bear. Improvised circus equipment was scattered around, platforms, hoops, and other props that revealed Robert's true intentions. James made a silent signal, and the group split up, preparing for the intervention. Emily continued photographing, her heart racing as she documented every detail of the illegal operation. Then something unexpected happened. A familiar figure emerged from the shadows of the shed. It was Margaret Thompson, the owner of the cafe. Her presence there was unsettling until Emily heard her choked voice. "Robert, this has to stop. I can't cover up your activities anymore." "Margaret, you don't understand," Robert replied, his voice a mix of pleading and threat. "This is bigger than all of us. The buyers aren't people you can mess with." The revelation hit Emily like a bolt of lightning. Margaret had been a silent accomplice all along, likely due to some form of blackmail or pressure. The complexity of the situation grew with each passing moment. James made another signal, and the agents prepared to move in. But before they could act, one of the young bears began thrashing violently in its cage, shaking the bars with surprising strength. The noise drew the attention of everyone in the shed. "Calm that animal down!" Robert shouted, rushing toward the cage with a training stick. It was at that moment Emily noticed something extraordinary. The agitated bear was one of the cubs she had saved from the tracks. Somehow Robert had managed to recapture it. Margaret took advantage of the chaos to position herself between Robert and the cage. "Enough!" she exclaimed, her firm voice echoing through the shed. "I won't let you hurt another animal." The tension in the air was palpable. Robert, with the stick still raised, stared at Margaret with a mix of anger and disbelief. The other two men, whom Emily now recognized as former employees of the traveling circus, seemed unsure of how to proceed. James took advantage of this moment of hesitation to give the final signal. The agents entered simultaneously through both doors, their authoritative presence filling the space. "Freeze! Environmental protection." The chaos that followed was controlled with professional precision. Robert and his accomplices, caught off guard, offered little resistance. Margaret, trembling but relieved, immediately began pouring her heart out to the agents, revealing everything she knew about the operation. Emily continued photographing, capturing every moment of the intervention, but her thoughts were with the bear cub she had recognized. Her gaze met the animals, and in that moment she was certain. Her mission was far from over. There was still much work ahead to ensure these animals were properly rehabilitated and that justice was served. The morning after the operation, Maple Ridge woke up to a transformed reality. Margaret's cafe was temporarily closed with a simple notice on the door. Closed for interior renovations, an unintentional metaphor for the unfolding events. Emily was sitting in a meeting room at the community center, where an impromptu task force had set up. The walls were covered with her photographs, documents, and a complex diagram showing the connections between everyone involved. James organized the veterinary reports of the rescued bears, while Olivia, who had insisted on participating, helped organize the information. "We need to understand how this started," said Anderson, the environmental agent, studying the documents spread across the table. "Margaret agreed to cooperate fully, and her story is beginning to reveal a bigger picture." Margaret entered the room at that moment, looking as though she had aged a decade in a day. She sat heavily in a chair and began to speak. It all started 8 months ago, when Robert returned to town. He was different, talking about big opportunities and important connections. At first I thought it was just idle talk, but then he started receiving calls from influential people, businessmen from big cities. Emily listened attentively while photographing each new document that surfaced. Margaret continued, "Robert came to me because he needed a place to hold discreet meetings. The cafe, being a natural gathering spot in town, was perfect for that. I didn't know about the bears at first, I swear. When I found out, he already had enough information to implicate me, too." Olivia, who had been quiet until then, interrupted. "Uncle Robert always talked about a certain Mr. Blackwood. He said he was the key to everything." The name caused an immediate reaction in Anderson. "William Blackwood? The entertainment tycoon?" "That would explain a lot," James commented, connecting the dots in his mind. "Blackwood has a reputation in the luxury private entertainment circuit. There are rumors about his exclusive parties with unconventional attractions." Emily began to realize they were facing something much bigger than a local animal exploitation scheme. It was a sophisticated network, connecting the small village of Maple Ridge to a world of high-end illegal entertainment. "Margaret," Emily asked gently, "do you still have the records of the meetings that took place at the cafe?" The lady nodded. pulling a small notebook from her bag. I wrote everything down: dates, coded names, amounts discussed. It was my way of feeling less powerless, I suppose. As they examined the notebook, a clearer story began to emerge. Robert had been recruited by Blackwood to establish a discreet training center in Maple Ridge. The small, isolated town was perfect, far from the eyes of authorities, with easy access to the wilderness. Olivia, who had remained deep in thought, suddenly stood up. "There's one more thing," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "On Uncle Robert's phone, I saw emails he was planning to expand the operation. Maple Ridge would only be the beginning." The revelation brought a heavy silence to the room. The scale of what they had uncovered was terrifying, but it also offered a unique opportunity to dismantle a much larger network of animal exploitation. Emily looked out the window at the snow beginning to fall again over Maple Ridge. The rescued bears were safe in the sanctuary now, but the more they uncovered, the clearer it became that their work was just beginning. "We need to act smart," Anderson declared, organizing the documents. "We have enough evidence to start, but we need to be strategic. Blackwood is powerful and has important connections." Margaret, who seemed to have regained some of her strength, added, "I'm willing to testify. I've carried this burden for far too long." The group worked until nightfall, building a solid case. Every photograph from Emily, every note from Margaret, every memory from Olivia, all the pieces fit into a larger puzzle that revealed a disturbing truth about how greed could corrupt even the most peaceful communities. 2 weeks had passed since the initial arrests. The winter in Colorado remained harsh, but within the Maple Ridge Wildlife Sanctuary, a warmth of renewal spread. Emily spent her mornings photographing the recovery of the rescued bears, documenting every small step in their healing journey. The cub she had recognized in the shed, now affectionately named Hope by the sanctuary staff, showed particular signs of recovery. James had noticed something extraordinary in its behavior. Despite the trauma it had endured, the animal maintained a gentle curiosity toward the humans caring for it. "It's like he remembers," James remarked one morning, watching Hope through the observation glass. "He can tell the difference between those who hurt and those who help." Olivia had become a constant presence at the sanctuary, dedicating all her free time to helping with the animal's recovery. Her transformation was remarkable, from a guilt-ridden teenager to a young woman determined to make a difference. "You know," she said to Emily while helping prepare the bears' meals, "I never imagined that such a big mistake could lead to something positive. I've decided I want to study veterinary medicine, specialize in wildlife." The case had captured national attention. Journalists from major media outlets began arriving in Maple Ridge, drawn by the story of corruption, redemption, and hope. Emily, with her photographs documenting the entire journey, became an unofficial spokesperson for the cause. Margaret transformed her cafe into an informal hub for environmental education. The walls, once adorned with old photographs of the town, now displayed images of the recovering bears and information about wildlife preservation. The establishment had become a symbol of the community's transformation. "Sometimes we need to face our own darkness to find the light," Margaret reflected, serving coffee to Emily one afternoon. "This town will never be the same, and that's a good thing." The investigation into William Blackwood continued to progress. The evidence provided by Margaret and the confessions from Robert had opened doors to a broader federal investigation. The entertainment mogul, who had always considered himself untouchable, was beginning to feel the noose tightening. On a particularly significant afternoon, Emily received a call that would change everything. It was from an internationally renowned environmental conservation magazine. They wanted to publish her complete photo series, from the rescue on the tracks to the recovery at the sanctuary. "We don't just want the photos," the editor explained. "We want the full story. People need to understand how a small town came together to face something much bigger than itself." Meanwhile, at the sanctuary, something extraordinary was happening. The bear that Emily had saved from the tracks was spotted nearby, her 3 cubs, including Hope, now reunited. She had found a way to communicate with her cub through the sanctuary fence. "It's like she's waiting for the right moment," James observed, moved. "She knows he's safe here recovering, but she doesn't want him to forget his roots." The scene inspired Emily to create her most impactful photograph yet. The image of the bear and Hope separated by the fence, their snouts almost touching, with snow falling gently around them. The photo perfectly captured the delicate balance between nature and human intervention, between freedom and protection. Maple Ridge was changing, evolving. The bear case had awakened something in the community, a collective awareness of the importance of preservation and shared responsibility. Wildlife study groups began to form, and environmental education projects were incorporated into the school curriculum. Olivia, in particular, had become a leader among the town's youth. She organized a group of student volunteers who helped at the sanctuary on weekends, turning her painful experience into a driving force for positive change. Summer arrived in Colorado, bringing with it not only the blossoming of nature, but also the climax of the investigation that had begun on that fateful winter day. Emily, now nationally recognized for her photography and activism, was back in Maple Ridge for what promised to be a pivotal moment. The small town was unrecognizable. What was once a sleepy mountain town now buzzed with activity. Journalists, environmentalists, and curious onlookers filled the streets, all awaiting the big announcement that was about to come. In the sanctuary, the transformation was even more evident. What had started as a modest rehabilitation center had expanded into a world-renowned education and conservation complex. James, now the executive director, could hardly contain his excitement as he guided Emily through the new visitor center. "This all started with you, Emily," he said, moved. "A brave photographer and a family of bears changed everything." Emily smiled, but her thoughts were with Hope and his mother. The young bear had become a symbol of resilience and the connection between humans and wildlife. His story of separation and reunion with his mother had touched hearts around the world. "How are they?" asked Emily, eager to see the bears that had started this entire journey. James led her to a new area of the sanctuary, a vast enclosure that stretched into the forest. "See for yourself," he said, pointing to a nearby clearing. There was Hope, now nearly grown, playing with his siblings under the watchful eye of their mother. The scene was one of pure joy and freedom, a living testament to the power of preservation and care. "We are ready for the final phase," explained James, "the full reintroduction into the wild. Hope and her family will be the first." Emily's heart swelled with emotion. She raised her camera, capturing the moment when Hope looked directly at her, as if recognizing the woman who had changed her destiny. But the day was just beginning. In the center of town, a press conference was being prepared. Margaret, Olivia, and the federal agents were all present, ready to make the announcement that would change the course of the fight against wildlife exploitation. Emily took her place beside them, her camera ready to document the historic moment. Agent Anderson took the microphone. "After months of intensive investigation, it is with great satisfaction that we announce William Blackwood has been indicted on multiple charges of animal trafficking, cruelty, and the formation of a criminal organization." The crowd erupted in applause and cheers of joy. Olivia, standing next to Emily, squeezed her hand, tears of relief and happiness in her eyes. Margaret was the next to speak. "Maple Ridge has learned a valuable lesson. We cannot remain silent in the face of injustice, whether against humans or animals. Today, we commit to being guardians of the nature that surrounds us." The press conference continued, detailing how the investigation had uncovered an international network of illegal wildlife trade. The downfall of Blackwood was just the beginning. Dozens of arrests were being made worldwide at that very moment. Emily observed everything through her lens, capturing the emotion, triumph, and promise of a better future with every click of her camera. But her mind wandered to the sanctuary, to Hope and her family, symbolizing everything they had fought for. When the press conference ended, Emily stepped away from the crowd, walking toward the forest. She found a quiet spot overlooking the mountains and the valley where it all began. She took one last photo of the day, the sun setting over Maple Ridge, casting a golden light over the transformed landscape. In that moment, Emily understood that her journey, like Hope's, was just beginning. The story she had captured with her camera was more than a tale of injustice and redemption. It was a call to action, a reminder of the power each individual has to make a difference. A year had passed since the historic press conference in Maple Ridge. Autumn painted the mountains of Colorado with golden and red hues, creating a breathtaking landscape that Emily captured with her camera. She was back in town for a special event, the inauguration of the Maple Ridge Environmental Conservation and Education Center. The center, built on the site of the old warehouse where the bears had been held captive, was a powerful symbol of transformation. Emily walked through the halls, admiring the exhibits that told the story of the town, the bears, and the change that had swept through the region. Olivia, now a promising veterinary student, guided a group of children through the main exhibit. Her face glowed with enthusiasm as she explained the importance of wildlife preservation. "And here," said Olivia, stopping in front of a large framed photograph, "we have the moment that changed everything. This is Hope, being released into the wild with her family." The photo taken by Emily showed Hope and her mother entering the forest, finally free. It was a powerful image of redemption and hope. Margaret approached Emily, offering her a cup of coffee. "Who would have thought that cold morning would change our lives forever?" she reflected. Emily nodded, taking a sip of the coffee. "Sometimes it just takes a spark to ignite a fire of change." The center was full of visitors, locals, tourists, and journalists, all eager to witness the transformation of Maple Ridge. James, now a renowned conservationist, was about to deliver an opening speech. "Welcome to our new Center for Conservation and Environmental Education," began James, his voice filled with pride. "This place represents not only our dedication to wildlife, but also our belief in the power of community and redemption." As James spoke, Emily noticed some commotion at the back of the room. Federal agents entered discreetly, accompanied by a handcuffed man, William Blackwood. Part of his sentence included witnessing the positive outcome of his negative actions. Blackwood's face was marked not by anger or resentment, but by an expression of awe and, perhaps, a touch of remorse. He silently observed the exhibits detailing the suffering caused by his greed, but also the incredible resilience of nature and the community. Emily approached him, her camera capturing the moment their eyes met. No words were exchanged, just a look that communicated more than any conversation could. After the speech, Emily was invited to take the stage. She hesitated for a moment. She had always preferred to stay behind the camera, but this time she knew she needed to share her voice. "When I took that first photo of Hope and her mother on the train tracks," Emily began, her voice trembling slightly, "I had no idea I was capturing the beginning of a revolution. Each of us has the power to make a difference, to be the voice for those who cannot speak for themselves." As she spoke, images from her journey were projected behind her: the chained bears, the dramatic rescue, the recovery at the sanctuary, and finally, the release. Each photo told a story of despair, hope, and triumph. "Maple Ridge is no longer just a town," Emily concluded. "Here it's a model of what we can achieve when we come together for a cause greater than ourselves." After the event, Emily walked to the edge of the forest, the same spot where she had taken that sunset photo a year earlier. This time she captured the sunrise, symbolizing a new beginning not just for Maple Ridge, but for everyone touched by this story. 10 years had passed since the inauguration of the Maple Ridge Conservation and Environmental Education Center. The small Colorado town, once known only for its picturesque landscapes, was now a beacon of hope for conservationists and nature lovers worldwide. Emily Johnson, now an internationally renowned photographer and environmental activist, drove her hybrid pickup truck along the winding road leading to Maple Ridge. Autumn painted the mountains with vibrant shades of red, orange, and gold, creating a scene that still took her breath away, even after so many visits. As she approached the town, Emily noticed the subtle yet significant changes. Solar panels adorned the roofs of many homes and businesses. The old gas station had been transformed into an electric vehicle charging station. Maple Ridge was not just a model of conservation, but also of sustainability. The Conservation Center, once a modest building, now occupied an impressive complex on the outskirts of town. Emily parked her vehicle and was greeted by a familiar figure. Olivia Carter, now Dr. Olivia Carter, the center's research director. "Emily," Olivia exclaimed, hugging her friend, "we were looking forward to your arrival. We have so many new things to show you." The two women walked through the center, passing groups of enthusiastic students and focused researchers. The place buzzed with energy and purpose. "Our reintroduction program has expanded significantly," Olivia explained, guiding Emily through a new sector of the complex. "Now, we don't just work with bears, but with several endangered species from the region. Emily observed everything with the eyes of a photographer and activist, noticing the details that told a story of progress and dedication. "And how is the bear population?" she asked, thinking of Hope. Olivia smiled, a glimmer of pride in her eyes. "Growing and thriving. In fact, we have a surprise for you." They headed to an observation area, overlooking a vast expanse of preserved forest. Olivia pointed to a distant spot. "Look through those binoculars," she instructed. Emily obeyed and felt her heart leap. There, in the clearing of a forest, stood a majestic bear she would recognize anywhere. Hope. But Hope wasn't alone. By her side, playing carefree, were two cubs. "Hope is a mother now," Olivia explained softly. "She represents the third generation since we began our work here. She's living proof that our efforts are making a difference." Emily lowered the binoculars, her eyes brimming with tears. The image of Hope, once a frightened cub trapped on the train tracks, now a strong and free mother, was too powerful for words. "But that's not all," Olivia continued, leading Emily back to the main building. "The impact of Maple Ridge has spread far beyond our borders." In the main hall, a large screen displayed an interactive world map. Bright dots marked locations across every continent. "Each of these points represents a conservation project inspired by the story of Maple Ridge," Olivia explained. "Communities around the world are replicating our model, adapting it to their local needs." Emily was amazed. What had started as an act of courage on a cold winter morning had turned into a global movement. "And there's more," said Olivia, a mysterious smile on her face. "Do you remember William Blackwood?" Emily nodded, recalling the entertainment tycoon whose greed had nearly destroyed Hope and so many other animals. "Well, after serving his sentence, he did something unexpected," Olivia continued. "He donated his entire fortune to environmental conservation causes. The Blackwood Fund now finances preservation projects worldwide." The news took Emily by surprise. It was a powerful reminder that redemption was possible, even in the most unlikely cases. As they walked through the town centre, Emily noticed an exhibit dedicated to the history of Maple Ridge. Her photographs, from that first dramatic shot on the train tracks to the most recent images of Hope and her cubs, told a story of despair, hope, and triumph. "You know, Emily," Olivia said, stopping in front of a particularly striking photo, "many people wonder how a small town in the middle of Colorado managed to spark a global conservation movement. The answer is right here, in this image." The photograph captured the moment when Emily, James, and the others had released Hope and her mother back into the wild. It was a picture of pure joy and freedom. "It was the perfect combination of compassion, courage, and action," Olivia continued. "You didn't just document history, Emily. You changed it." Emily felt a wave of emotion rush through her body. "We all changed it," she replied softly. "Every person who refused to stay silent, every volunteer who dedicated their time, every child who learned to love and respect nature. It was a collective effort." By the end of the day, Emily found herself once again at the edge of the forest, her camera in hand. The sun was setting, casting a golden light over the ridge. She raised the camera, ready to capture yet another magical moment. But before she could press the shutter, a movement caught her attention. Hope emerged from the forest, her two cubs playing around her. The bear paused for a moment, looking directly at Emily. In that instant, Emily lowered the camera. Some moments she knew were too precious to be captured on film. They were meant to be lived, felt, and remembered. As Hope and her cubs disappeared back into the safety of the forest, Emily reflected on the incredible journey that a single courageous action could set in motion. Maple Ridge was not just a success story in environmental conservation. It was a testament to the power of compassion, perseverance, and the belief that every individual can make a difference. The sun finally set, but Emily knew this was not an end, but a continuous beginning. As the stars began to dot the sky over Colorado, she made a silent promise to continue her fight, inspiring others to join the cause of conservation and harmony between humans and nature. The legacy of Maple Ridge, Hope, and all those who had been part of this extraordinary journey would continue to echo through generations, an eternal reminder that when we come together for a cause greater than ourselves, there is no limit to the good we can achieve.